I pre-ordered the S1ii. The second it was announced, hoping that I'd get better performance than the S1R2 with overheating. And I put it in the sun the first day I got it next to the S1R2, and it overheated in 8 minutes. Yeah. So I was a little disappointed, needless to say. Since I run a video production company in Southern California, shooting in direct sun is pretty common for most of the year. The temperature can be 75 to 90 degrees, and I could be out there doing very long takes, either for a wedding, real estate shoot, corporate, live event, you name it. Since I got the S1ii, I've been using it 2 to 4 times a week for paid jobs, and I have never had it overheat on a job. But I have done testing in direct sun, not on a job, and gotten it to overheat pretty easily. I wanted to share with you some tips on how to keep the camera from overheating if you decide to keep this camera, or if you're looking to buy this camera and want to know what you're getting into. I'm not here to defend Lumix. I do love the camera. It is a fantastic camera and has a ton of features that I want for my business. One thing to keep in mind is this camera is producing a lot of performance in a small body. And I know everyone online is griping about having a bigger camera that has a better cooling system, but the reality of it is, for right now, sales for Lumix are much higher in the smaller mirrorless camera market than they are for bigger, larger cinema cameras. So as much as I would love an S1H2 to come out right now and have an incredible cooling system, unfortunately, I need a camera now that's gonna help me do my job. So in the meantime, I'm gonna make this camera work. It's also good to note that any cameras in a mirrorless body, from the R5C to the R5 Mark II to the Nikon Z8, they all overheat, even with fans, even with bigger bodies and attachments. The only camera that doesn't is the Sony line, especially the FX3 or FX30. But you also have to realize that they aren't performing at the level of the S1ii or the S1R2. Doesn't have open gate, definitely doesn't have open gate 60, doesn't shoot over 4K, but we'll get into that. So in testing out different combinations and talking to others online who are doing the same, we found some culprits to the heat in this camera. One is the CF Express cards. CF Express cards run extremely hot. Anytime I've ever shot on a Sony, or any of my friends that shoot professionally on Sony, most of them aren't using a CF Express card for that reason. The second thing is the battery. The battery runs really hot when it's internal, and taking out that battery, or what type of battery you use, does help. For instance, I've tested the batteries that come with the camera directly from Panasonic, and they seem to run warmer than aftermarket batteries. Aftermarket batteries, for some reason, give the camera a little bit more runtime. The weather and UV index also play a huge part. I noticed when I've shot in direct sun at around 74 degrees with the UV index about 6 or below, I don't seem to have a problem with overheating, even during long takes, even 4K 60. It's only when it's above 74, when it gets into the 75 to 77s and above, that's where the camera really heats up if you're just using a battery, CF Express card, and SD card and shooting it. I would always set my thermal settings to high, and I've done a test where I've tried Auto 1 or Auto 2 over fast fan internally, and I can tell you right now, fast fan does cool the camera down faster and last longer in the sun. This is fan on Auto 1 with an S1ii, fan on fast, both shooting 4K, 23 frames a second, both with aftermarket batteries. At 25 minutes, the overheating sign came on like 30 seconds ago, and I put a little fan in the back, so let's see if it cools it down and removes that overheating sign. All right, 30 minutes and 47 seconds, overheating just turned on the second camera that has the fan turned to fast. Both thermal settings are high. This one's still running. 31 minutes. I put the fan in not too long ago, so let's see if it outdoes the one on fast. This one has Auto 1 fan. Both thermal settings to high. SD cards only running in these two. All right, camera that I put a fan on at 38 minutes and 20 seconds. The overheating sign turned off. That's on Auto 1. When I put on the fan, and the one that has no fan, that has fan all set on fast, is still blinking with the overheating warning at 38 minutes. It is 76 degrees in direct sun in California. Just had the one with the fan set to fast shut down, and the one that I added the fan that wasn't set to high, fan was set to Auto 1, is still going 47 minutes in. So 47 minutes, the other one
is dead. Both S1 IIs with SD cards only.
So a few things that I've learned is using an external battery. So a dummy battery helps big time with the heat. Not using a CF Express card, which sounds ridiculous because you want to dual record, but we can get more into details about that later. Taking out the CF Express card and just using an SD card, I found has worked just as well as attaching an SSD. And in my personal opinion, the less I can rig up my camera, the better for the type of work I do. Just keeping the weight down and not having something dangling or going to settings to change it to move to SSD. Since the SD card runs just as cool, I choose to leave it in there and not use the CF Express card. The other thing that really helps is either getting an external fan that you can pick up on Amazon for about 40 to 50 bucks that has a battery, or you can attach to an external battery, or picking up the Ulanzi CU01, which has an external battery that you can attach to it that's really small and low profile. Because the Ulanzi camera doesn't actually physically touch the back of the camera, I don't feel as effective as a fan unless you get thermal pads and put them in between to kind of create a hard wall for the cooling system to go through. So I also have a test on that to show the difference between those two.
So the three things I used was this tilted cage to hold this fan, which acts as a refrigerator. It gets so cold. And it has an external battery, which is cool. It goes on the back of the camera. And then I use these thermal pads I got on Amazon for super cheap. And they go on the back of the camera screen. So the cams both have this Ulanzi fan that gets ice cold that you put on the back, and I hold it up with this V-mount. One of the cameras, I added in a thermal pad on the back of that section, and I added a thermal pad on the bottom so that it made one connection, and on the other camera I have nothing. Alright, doing the test with the two S1IIs again with just the SD card inside. This time I have the Ulanzi fans held up by a small rig V-mount plate, running at full blast. Starting the test now. It is 77 degrees in direct sun in California. Shooting 24 frames a second, 4K. Alright, we are at 30 minutes on both of these S1IIs with just an SD card and the Ulanzi fans held up by a V-mount. It's bouncing between 77 and 78 in California sun, and it is 82 in the shade. Warning sign at 41 minutes, and the other one not. The camera that doesn't have thermal pads on the back of the screen is still having an overheating sign at 45 minutes, 46 minutes now, and the one with thermal pads is not overheating yet. No sign, nothing. And this one is still going, 46 minutes. All right, the camera with non-thermal pads just shot off at a little under 48.5 minutes. The other one with thermal pads is still going. No warning. Sweet Jesus, I found somewhat of a fix. So over an hour with the Ulanzi fan and just an SD card in direct sun between 77 and 78 degrees, and thermal pads in between the doors so that the heat can touch the coolness of the Ulanzi fan. I have no overheating warnings at all in this whole hour and 3 minutes almost.
I want to show you some rigging ideas to keep it really light and easy. I'm not into rigging out cameras really large for my workflow personally, but these are the simplest ways to rig them out that work for keeping the camera cool. Here are some tests to show you how some of these options work in direct sun.
All right, I'm with the S1II doing an overheat test in direct sun. It is 79 degrees. It just dropped recently to 77, 78. It kind of bounces between the two. UV index is 5. I'm using an aftermarket fan I got on Amazon for about $30 or $40. V-mount battery, Condor Blue dummy battery, and I'm shooting just to an SD card. I'm a little over an hour now, no overheat warning. The camera is hot to the touch. I'm shooting in 4K 24 frames a second. And this will be my setup for wedding ceremonies and long outdoor takes. Test number 2, I shot for over an hour at 60 frames a second, 4K with a fan that just died because I forgot to charge it, but it just died. Dummy battery and SD card only. It's 80 degrees in Southern California. UV index is 8. I think this thing can go for quite a while, so this solution seems to be working really well. 44 minutes and 15 seconds, battery is dying, but there is no overheat warning. So we are doing good. 80 degrees, heat index 11, SD card only with thermal pads and Alonzi fans. All right, we made it 45 minutes with a thermal pads inside, SD card only, in direct sun at 80 degrees. With the Alonzi fan and thermal pads behind the screen. No overheat warning, battery's dying unfortunately, and I have things to do today, so good sign.
In conclusion, I want to start off by saying I absolutely love this camera, and it's almost the perfect camera for me. Even though there are so many people online who are wishing for a larger camera and that would be their first choice to not deal with this, I am one of those weird people who want a small camera that kind of does everything, and I'm starting to realize how unrealistic that is the more I talk to people online and the more tests I do with other camera brands. I use these cameras 2 to 4 days a week to shoot professionally, and the lighter the better. As I'm shooting so much, I want a lower payload on my back and to get into areas that are easier in different angles. So for me, having a larger setup is the least of my desires, really. Having to change batteries, I have a lot of S1ii we use, and I just don't want to have a bunch of mix of batteries. I already have lighting batteries and V-mount batteries and everything else, so keeping everything kind of uniform is nice. In the meantime, I'm gonna make the S1ii work for me. In times where I'm not in the sun, the camera works perfectly. I have no issues, I have no fears. I love the features, I love the low light, the autofocus that's been upgraded, the colors, the dynamic range boost. I mean, there's a lot to love about this camera. It's kind of ticked all the boxes that I've been looking for in a camera. Some suggestions to Lumix: it would be nice if they could make a firmware to either raise the thermal management so that the camera could maybe run a little hotter if it's safe. Another suggestion is maybe update the fan in firmware, maybe make it run faster, that would be great. Making a fan attachment on the outside, that's probably something that they don't want to do, but maybe another company can, like Tilta or Alonzi could make a little fan that fits in the back. It's a little bit stronger, maybe lasts a little longer with batteries, and could stick in the back without falling out. That'd be great. Another suggestion is maybe make a different codec or recording form and like 24 frames a second that maybe uses less processing speed. I don't know if they can line skip it or do something somehow with firmware and maybe make kind of like what the Canon R5 did, where they made a lesser 24 frames 4K where it's a little less heat generative. I think that'd be a great firmware update. Also, I really wish they would have done a design similar to Sony, where they had, you know, maybe 2 dual CF Express / SD card slots so that you could choose between the two if you weren't doing, you know, open gate 60 frames a second and you were going to be in the sun, you wanted to do 24 or 60 4K. I think that would have been a great option. Even if one of the cards was that way and the other one was an SD card, that would have been wonderful. I think just having an SD card in there has helped. One thing I will note for people who are afraid of dual recording and not having that option, a neat little trick that I figured out is if you, let's say you're shooting a wedding, for instance, and you get to a ceremony and it's really hot, we would drop a CF Express card out of the slot and just shoot on an SD card. And then after the ceremony or later that day, you can put your CF Express card back in to have dual recording, and you can actually transfer your SD card into your CF Express card. So now you have 2 copies of it. Yes, technically you won't have 2 copies of it for maybe an hour or 2, but at least that's an option. Another thing is a great feature that Lumix has is that if you do have a corrupt file and you happen to have one card in camera, you can fix that corrupt file instead of taking it to an exterior program. You can even take that SD card out, leave it out for a couple days, put it back in, and fix that file within camera. So those features alone, yes, they're a pain in the ass and a workaround, are kind of making me feel a little bit less worried about not dual recording all the time. It's been years since I haven't dual recorded, but it's nice to have that option. And most of the time, I'm not shooting in direct sun for more than 30 minutes to an hour. And if I am, most likely I would use another camera. I would suggest using an S5 II or an S1H. So that would be my option. The reason I'm making these videos is I feel there's a lot of YouTubers online and that are very entertaining, and I love that they get these cameras on embargo day. But for whatever reason, a lot of these YouTubers aren't pushing the cameras to their limits. Maybe they don't have time. Maybe they're not working professionals besides creators online. And I look up to them for advice and for testing these cameras out in the way that I would need them. I wish that we had more people online actually testing in the ways that people are using them. I understand not everybody's using them for long form content in the sun, but as I've been posting online, there are a ton of people, and a lot of them have been reaching out to me. Yes, a lot of them are weddings, a lot of them shoot live events. Some people are in Florida, some people are in Arizona, California. So these are hotter states or hotter times a year that they absolutely do shoot in direct sun for long periods of time. And I understand if these YouTubers don't, I wish there was more that did. So people like me don't waste our time researching online to find out. We have to rig it out and find our own solutions when we get these cameras. I am a working professional and I do use these cameras all the time, and I use them to put food on the table. And so I need to make sure that these cameras can do the job and won't fail on me in the middle of a shoot. Thank you for watching. With that said, I have a few more videos coming out in the next couple weeks. I'm testing the S1 II up against the Sony FX3. I'm also testing it side by sides with the S5 II just to show some difference in colors and dynamic range and low light and autofocus. And if you have any other video suggestions, please leave a comment. Please like and subscribe, and I appreciate you. And until the next time.